Alrighty, so what we're going to look at is how to change the acoustic guitar string. So a couple of things that you might want is a pair of pliers, some wire cutters, or you can use this part of the plier to cut the string afterwards. This capo that I got has a special tool at the end here that we can actually use to remove the bridge pins. You can use your tuning app, or if you have a tuner, that will be handy as well. And then your desired type of string. So these strings here are Diodario, and they're the special extra coated ones, so they're meant to last a lot longer, and so they'll have a brighter tone and they won't corrode as much. The other thing you can do is get a microfiber cloth, and then every time you play you wipe them down afterwards, and it just helps remove the oil from your fingers. Helps them last longer. Alright, so these are fantastic strings, I really like them. What you need to decide though is what gauge you're going to put on. So this is what's called a 10 to 47. So the 10 is the high E string, and then the 47 is the low string. The general idea is the thicker the string, the better the tone, but then the trade-off is you might end up with a higher action, or it might be a bit harder to play. But it's always really important to make sure that when you're putting heavier gauge strings on, that you make sure that you set it up correctly afterwards. So you may need to adjust your truss rod, or get a professional to do that for you. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is, there's two ways we can do this. We're going to take all the strings off at once, and give your guitar a nice clean up, and put them back on. Or if you're wanting to keep the tension, what we can actually do is do one at a time. Depending on, it just makes it a little bit harder to clean that way. So today I think what we're going to do is actually, we might just do one at a time, because it's actually relatively clean. But if you're wanting to give it a really good clean, take them all off and then give it a wipe down and put your new strings on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to detune this string here, starting at the low E. Okay, I'm going to unwind that here. Alright, now it's up to you. You can just loosen it off. You could then just cut it if you don't want to fully unwind it. So there we go to this. It also depends on whether you're wanting to save them and reuse them. Maybe you might want them for a spare set or something if they're still not in too bad condition. So you can take it off like this, or you could cut it if you're planning on putting it in the bin. I'm going to take my capo and here, and I'm going to put it underneath this bridge pin and just push this up very gently until that pin comes out. The pin looks like this, has a little bit of a groove in it. And with the old string, if I'm going to keep it, I'm just going to fold it up nicely like this, and I can then actually put it back in the pack later on, or I can put it in the bin, whatever I'm going to do with it, okay? You can sort of fold them up however you want, get a bit fiddly, but you know, chuck it back in the pack later on. So because we're just going to do one at a time, when we open up the pack here, we normally have like a bit of an indication of what strings which. Sometimes they're color coded. Diodario are great for color coding their strings. So we'll just have to wait and see what we get here. Open this up, a little bit of information in there. Sort of has a little bit of a key in here, there's a sticker. There's a little bit of a key in here letting us know what gauge and what color everything is, okay? And it also has that on the back of the pack here as well. One thing to keep in mind is that this set is, they also have 8 and 7 set strings as well. They're grayed out at the moment, so this is just showing that this is just a 6 set, okay? So the colours are on the back there as well. So let's open it up, and we're going to get our low E string. So low E string is the gold one here, okay? So they come in pairs of 2 normally. So I'm going to unwind them. I'm going to carefully put the string I'm not using, careful not to flick it in your eye. And I'm going to put the string that I'm not using just down nicely on the floor there. And we'll take this gold one. Now, what we're going to do here is we're going to put this pin into the hole. And what I then do is I like to face the groove to the sound hole. And as I push the string down, I'm going to pull, like as I push the peg down, so I'm going to pull the string up until they sort of push past each other and lock into place. If you can pull the string like this and the pin's actually still pulling up, then you need to keep working on it until it sits nicely like that. Now, strings come way oversized like this. So what we want to do is actually, we're going to create like a locking tuner effect with the way that we put these strings on. What a locking tuner is you can get these special tuners and have this disc on the back. And what happens is when you put the string in, you can tighten it off and it clamps it into place. So we're going to replicate that by putting our tuning peg in this position so that the hole is vertical. And what we're going to do is come in from the underside and just put the string in there like this. And we're going to go to the 12th fret and put a hand in this position like this. And now we're going to pull that tight. Now this is the amount of string that we need before we tighten it up. So you see all of that there is excess. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put my fingers underneath here, and between my pointer finger and my thumb I'm holding that string here, and then I'm going to bring this string back around the peg and go underneath the string. So back around the peg, under the string. I'm going to pull it really tight against that peg, okay? And then once I've got that done, I'm going to go over the top and back around. Now as I tighten this up now, what we're going to do is just make sure that the string is nice and tight and that it coils up nicely underneath, okay? It kind of like moves around a little bit. You just got to make sure that it's going on nice and neatly, and you can sort of use the string to help make sure that it sits on well. And then it goes nicely into the nut here, into the groove. And we just want to, sometimes you'll find that if the bridge pin wasn't fully in the right position, it might slip a little bit. Don't worry about it, you just, and if it loosens off, you just retighten it, okay? So that gives us that nice sort of, and then sometimes you can grab your pliers. If anything's sticking out, just give it a bit of a squeeze in there, make sure it's all nice. And then what we can actually do is then just come in with our cutters, get as close as possible, and just trim off that bit of string there. Be very careful, the strings can be quite sharp, especially the thin ones. So just be mindful of that. Now at the moment, what I can do is actually tune it up now. So I could use my tuner, or I can wait to the end. But because we're doing one at a time, I might actually get it back up to pitch now. So I'm actually going to use this A string. Now if I put my finger on the 5th fret of the low E string and play the A string that was in tune before, I just need to match that. It's somewhere around there. And what we're going to do is, now that it's got tension, when we put all the strings on, we'll get the tuner out and then fine tune it, okay? So it's pretty close. So now we're going to repeat the process. So we're going to undo the A string. Like I said, you could cut it off if you want. I'm going to actually keep these, so I'm going to take that off and remove the bridge pin. Alright, we're going to wrap that up nicely. Sometimes easier said than done. Alright, let's wrap that up nicely. Now, the next string we want is the one on the floor. In this case, this one's actually black, so they do change colors depending on what kind of strings, but just make sure you check the key. So this is actually our A string, so pop the string in the hole, groove facing the sound hole. I'm going to push it down till it locks in place. We'll come up here, we make sure that the tuning peg is vertical. Come on the underside and push the string through, make sure not to prick your finger. There we go. Alright, 12th fret, let's get the height of our string. Here we go, that's good. Pull the string back. Now remember, what we're going to do is go under, pull it tight against the peg, nice and tight. Sometimes it's a bit awkward here. Pull it tight and then over the top tighten it up. I use my pointer finger on my right hand just to push the string down as I'm going around so that you can make sure that it goes underneath nicely. Okay. And there we go. If there's any coil that's not quite where we want it, we can just maneuver it around a little bit. Make sure everything's in nice and tight. Now, what the actual locking tuner method is basically by putting it under the string and back over the top, it's actually clamping the bit of string against the pole. And so it's effectively kind of locking it in place. Let's see if I can show you what that looks like. So hopefully you can see that there, that it's basically locked nice and firmly against the tuning peak there. Alright, so obviously that means it's going to help us try and keep it in tune a bit more. This is E. So now what I'm going to do is use that same method, but we're going the other way. I'm going to use this A note on the low E and tune this A string up until they sound pretty much the same. You will hear a bit of cracking and creaking once the string's sort of getting into place. Just keep an eye on that the pin's not coming all the way out. That's roughly somewhere in the ballpark there. Alright, you probably find we might just end up being slightly flat or something like that when we get the tuner out. So now we're going to move on to the D string. We'll check the colour, so we need to get another pair and see. I mean, obviously you can see the thickness, but it's good just to check the colour and make sure you're putting the right string on. So take that off. And remove the bridge pin. Alrighty, so we'll tighten that back up. Alright, so now the silver ones are actually always the high E string and the B string. So it's definitely these ones here, and if we look at the colours on the end, okay, we've got silver and another goldy kind of one. I can actually see the silver one's thicker, but you could just double check so you don't accidentally mix them up. Alright, so we do the same process. Let's lock that string into place with the bridge pin. Push down on the others, make sure they're nice and firm. And once again, it's just a rinse and repeat at the moment. Make sure it's vertical. Put it back in. Come to the 12th fret. Get our string length, that's about right. Okay, pull it around tight on the peg. Back over the top. Watch your eyes so you don't accidentally poke yourself in the eye, because I can't imagine that would be very fun. Alright, here we go. We tighten that up. There we go. Oh, see that crack there? It's just all things moving in place. Alright, tune now on the A string, and on the 5th fret that note's actually a D, so that's why we're able to use that as a reference pitch. You notice I like to just put my hand over when I'm tightening them up. It's just in case for some reason it snaps or something like that. Pretty close. Alright, at least getting us in the ballpark, and it's keeping that tension nice on the neck for us. Okay, so now we're going to go onto this side and loosen this one down. Occasionally something to keep in mind is if your strings are older, they sometimes do actually snap when you detune it, maybe just because that tension's gone now and it was ready to be changed, and it will actually snap. So just keep that in mind, it does happen. And it's not uncommon, like I said earlier, to get a little bit of a stab in your finger from the point of these thinner strings. So just be a little bit mindful, because it does sting a little bit here and there. So just be careful. Alrighty, so now we're going to pick up the other string that should be nicely here. Alright. Now the only difference is we're now working on the other end of the guitar, so we're just going to do everything in reverse basically. But we still want to make sure that we're going from the underside. So we got in vertical like that. We're going to poke the string through here. Okay, set our length. Yeah, that's pretty good. Wrap it around the pole, go underneath, over the top. Bit of tension. Start winding it up. Once you get a little few winds on it, you can pretty much let that end go. Just make sure it coils up nicely underneath there. Make sure it's always sitting in the groove, the nut of your guitar. Sometimes it goes down there a little bit, I just like to pull it up. Make sure it's coiling nicely. Careful of that bit that's just dangling around there. So, okay, we're going to put that nice and tight. Cut that off. Okay, yeah, it's looking good. Okay, let's go and tune this one. Cover the string. Hear that cracking again. Just try. Sometimes when that slips, it's going to detune a little bit, you know, so. Just trying to get it into that position where it stops sort of slipping. Check that everything's sort of sitting where you want it to along the way, and everything's nice and tight. Just going to do it by ear a little bit. It's close. Very close. Alright, now we've got our last two to go, B string. Alright. Personally for me, the amount of coil that was on these before, probably a little bit too much, so setting the length of your string does sort of help you avoid having massive amounts of coiled string on the end of the tuning peg. Just try to be very careful of these so I can hopefully avoid stabbing myself. It can be a little bit trickier to remove them if this, and you want to keep them intact, because when you've used that locking tuning method, because obviously the strings are all bent in different positions, and so it can be a little bit harder to get that off, so just be careful. Alright, so we're down to the B string now, so let's get our last pair. Check the colour. For me, I can see at this angle that that one's thicker, so in this case it's black and then silver again. So we're just going to double check just to make sure I don't make a boo-boo. Black and then silver, yeah, okay. Sometimes they do look sort of similar, so it's always good just to double check. Okay, let's pop our pin in, pull our string up. Alright. Okay, just put the string through. Be careful you don't accidentally put the string underneath one of the existing strings when you're threading it through. Okay, there we go. Get our string height again. There we go. I'm going to pull that back, get underneath, over the top. Okay. These ones be a lot more careful because they're a bit harder to see, being a bit thinner. Okay, making sure that's coiling up nicely. Okay, I'm going to trim this one off. Be very careful when trimming the strings. There has been times where I've accidentally cut the wrong string, and yeah, means you're going back to the music shop to buy some more. Make sure they're nice and firm, and then our last one. This is normally the one that pricks my finger if ever. This is the one you be careful of. If ever it's going to happen, it's normally this one. Like I said, you can keep them for spares, or you know, just dispose of them properly in the bin. All right, last one. Vertical. String through. Now by this stage you'll be a pro at it. So under, over the top, start winding, making sure that it's a bit trickier with this one, so I like to really try and keep a bit of tension on it while I'm winding. Taking a little bit, so you can see even at this shorter string length, it's still taking a while to get that tension on it. So you can imagine if you had all that excess string on there, you know, it's just not needed. Let's cut that up nice and close. Tune this one up. Now, unfortunately, if any of them are going to snap, this is normally the one to go first. So just keep that in mind. Hasn't happened too many times, thankfully, but does sort of happen. So I'm just going to quickly check. It's roughly about where an E is. So I'm going to use this harmonic trick just to check. So I'm using the harmonics on the 5th fret and the 7th fret to check the notes sound the same. The one on the 5th, the bottom one on the 7th. And this helps me fine tune. don't know if you heard on that last one, there's a slight wobble. When the notes are in tune, that wobble will go away. If you've never tuned your guitar without a tuner and just using the guitar itself, just remember that all the notes can be found, provided the low E is in tune, on the 5th fret, except for when you go to tune your B string, you'll have to reference the note on the G string from the 4th fret. Okay, so that'll be pretty close, it's in the ballpark. What we're going to do now is all strings need to be stretched. So I'm going to put my thumb on top of the string and my 4 fingers on the other side, and I'm going to push against each other, and I'm going to work my way up the fretboard, and I'm just going to try and get some of that stretch out of there so that hopefully the strings settle a little bit quicker. Alright, just sort of get some of that play out of the string a little bit. And just go through all the strings and just give them a little bit of a stretch. Alright, next one. A little bit more of a stretch. Probably be careful sliding your fingers like that, you don't want to. Being new strings, it shouldn't really cut you, but I guess just gotta be careful. Hopefully that will help them sit just that little bit better. When tuning your guitar, a nice little tip is to make sure to have it looser and then tighten up to the note. So now we're going to do our last part by putting a tuner on. We can use an amp if we like. We're going to use this tuner here. We're going to make sure it's on the guitar setting, because this does have a chromatic setting, a guitar setting, a bass setting, a violin setting, and a ukulele. So I'm going to make sure to turn on the guitar setting, and that just means it's only going to stick to the notes we want for our strings and none of the others. Just keep that in mind. If you're wanting to tune any other way, you would need to use the chromatic tuner. So let's see what happens here. We're going to pluck our low E string. Now it's a little bit to the left, it's a bit flat. When I get it right in the center here, it now goes green. Okay, now we come down to A. A little flat again. There we go. D. Or just a little bit flat again. Obviously, because I tuned it just before by ear, they're all pretty much similar in a little bit flat. So this is just fine tuning it up a little bit. And then we just go through again. Beautiful. Turn off your tuner so that you don't waste your battery, and you should be good to go. Probably over the course of the next few days, just make sure to retune and as you're practicing, and they should settle and hopefully sound pretty good. Let's have a listen. Awesome.